Welcome back everybody, my name is Nick930 and this is my review for the independently developed retro shooter game, Dusk. Dusk is a first-person shooter game with a heavy emphasis on fast-paced combat against several enemies at once. The game is heavily inspired by the design of the original Quake, complete with the low polygon graphics, limited color palette, and rocket-jumping twitch shooter gameplay. In Dusk, you play as the Dusk Dude and are captured by an insidious cult after investigating the town of Dusk, Pennsylvania, in the hopes of finding a room of treasure there. After breaking out of the cellar at the start of the game, the player is then forced to fight their way through hundreds of cultists and possessed enemies as they uncover the dark secret hidden underneath this small rural town. The story isn't necessarily a major part of the experience though. Much like classic 90s shooter games, Dusk only provides narrative by means of its level design and its short exposition at the end of each of the 3 episodes. Each episode is roughly 10 levels long, and the whole game can be beaten in around 3 to 4 hours depending on how willing you are to completely explore each location and hunt down well-hidden secrets. The story feels exactly like a retro shooter game in this sense, and I think the developers at New Blood Interactive nailed the dark atmosphere and creepy farmland theme with its excellent level designs and creative enemy types. Dusk's gameplay also perfectly captures the spirit of the classic strafing shooter genre. Each level starts off immediately with enemies to shoot at, with perfect difficulty pacing and smart weapon placement. Most levels require you to search for hidden colored keys to open new pathways, with various secret weapon stashes hidden off the beaten path, and plenty of enemies waiting to ambush you. Enemies vary from weaker cultists and chainsaw-wielding farmhands to demon scarecrows and soldiers. There's even a few bosses scattered throughout that require you to dish out some serious damage while dodging multiple attacks in generally confined spaces. I think the only enemy type I wasn't a big fan of were the rats, as they were too small and just felt awkward to fight. But generally the enemy design was pretty decent, and felt consistent with the game's rural theme. The weapons all feel great, and I found myself quickly swapping between them all to deal with different enemy types. There's pistols, which can be dual-wielded to speed up their rate of fire, as well as lever-action shotguns that can be used the same way. Then there's the classic super shotgun, which can deal massive damage but has a lower rate of fire, and some more conventional weapons like an assault rifle and a grenade launcher. Less conventional though were the sword, rivet gun, and crossbow. The sword is an insanely powerful weapon that I often found hidden in secret areas. If the player has 100 health, the sword can be charged up and deal some serious damage to enemies, often killing them with a single blow. And if the player has enough morale points, the sword can be used to deflect enemy projectiles back at them, which is a very creative feature. Morale points can be collected from various items like alcohol. However, if you drink too much alcohol, your aim is suddenly hijacked and thrown all over the place to simulate that you're drunk, and it's close to impossible to do anything until the effect wears off. It's cool that they implemented this amount of detail to the experience, but I think moving the player's crosshair is a bit much. I think just making the camera shake without affecting the player's aim would be a better implementation of this concept. Fans of the original Quake and other related shooters that came afterwards should already be familiar with concepts like bunny hopping and rocket jumping, both of which are possible in Dusk, and are sometimes required either to gain a tactical edge on the swarms of enemies or to reach otherwise impossible secret doors. But unlike those older games, you can also run and slide by pressing the crouch key, which is a pretty cool modern feature that feels like a proper addition to the player's moveset, that can also be useful in certain combat situations. Thankfully, Dusk does not require the player to reload their weapons ever, but to satisfy players who have gotten into the habit of reloading after every kill in video games, the developers implemented a cool cosmetic animation that plays whenever you hit the R key, making your gun swing around as if being reloaded. It does nothing practical, but it's a fun addition either way. Outside of the 3 campaigns available and the endless survival mode, Dusk also features competitive multiplayer. The game's multiplayer, however, needs some serious work. When I tried to play, there was only a single server available to join, and the lag made it unplayable. Enemies and their animations were not consistent in the slightest, and while the map design seemed decent enough, it just didn't feel as polished as it should be, especially considering how simple the premise is. It's also strange that the multiplayer is a separate EXE, rather than being built directly into the main game. Though this could be a good thing down the line, as it might mean the developer plans to make the multiplayer free to play, which could bring some much needed players to the non-existent player base. And finally, let's talk about those classic 90s visuals. Dusk has perfectly captured the essence of what made the original Quake and several other games like it so special. Just like those retro games, Dusk has a very limited amount of colors available, with mostly dark reds, oranges, browns, blacks, and occasional green, which all help to set the dark, hellish mood of the experience. All the weapons, characters, and models feature low-quality textures and are made up of very few polygons, allowing it to fit right in as if it were made in that time period. But at the same time, to give the experience a sort of new age sheen, there's some enhanced lighting options and effects that can be tweaked based on your preference. You can apply bloom, for example, and set the frame rate to whatever you prefer. The game runs beautifully at an uncapped frame rate, and I never once had any sort of crashing or glitches throughout my entire playtime. I rarely found myself getting lost in the levels thanks to the well-detailed interiors and recognizable landmarks. And the overall design and feel of the experience just feels really polished. Overall, Dusk is probably one of the best retro shooter experiences I've played in years. It doesn't just take inspiration from the classics, it builds on them with some great new ideas, smart level designs, challenging enemy encounters, and a unique and creative setting to go along with it. There's plenty of content on offer here, and the asking price is more than generous, coming in at only $20 US. The only downside to the experience is the severe lack of a multiplayer player base, and unstable character animations in this multiplayer could possibly be a factor in this. But if you're looking for a fast-paced and challenging single-player shooter game, then Dusk is absolutely worth checking out. I hope you guys enjoyed this review, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos like this posted every week.